What's good, people? It's your man Nat Burnz, aka Nat Busy, and we're live at the Guard Hour. Today, got a real special presentation coming your way. Get to talk to an OG homie of mine. I ain't seen him or talked to him in quite a few moons. Thanks God for social media. We were able to reconnect. I see what the brother got going on. Much like myself, you would never be able to pin him down. And for me, that was scripted. And watching his playbook and how they moved, him and the good brother Master P back in the day. Big shout to my brother Kazi. Salute to him. All those brothers ushered me into this independent music game way back in the 90s. And to see them around and still making moves and being honored, you know, when they're having their story told as it pertains to the BET series, No Limit Chronicles, is real dope to see, man. And to have been that close to that, man, was really a blessing. It was truly invigorating. You know what I'm saying? So it's a pleasure to talk to him today. We ain't gonna waste too much time, so with no further ado, as they like to say, we're gonna try to get right into the proceedings this evening. Feel me? And it's all love. Miss L, I see you. Freddie D, what's good, my G? Freddie D, grind like I.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yo, what's going on, big homie?
Oh man, just trying to live life like you. You know, you doing it big.
Yeah, right. Yo, like I said at the top of the hour, man, I'm following the playbook, man. I seen you dudes do some amazing things over the years, man. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
We ain't gonna take up too much time. Please, man, introduce yourself and let the people know what it is you do.
Okay, my name is Tobin Costen. You know, I'm probably known for being at No Limit Records and also being at Me and Mine Entertainment, my own label, and working for artists like, you know, Master P, King George, and working with Little Troy and Shortstop Records. So music business executive, entrepreneur, and now I'm college professor, and also still doing the entrepreneur bit, but happy to be here and featured on the No Limit Chronicles.
No doubt. Now I know y'all, that was a lot for them to take in.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Yeah, absolutely.
All these years to me, you was like Tommy from Martin. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it that Tobin does? I don't even know what he does. I just know he's
most people don't.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because I've been so behind the scenes, and a lot of times when you're behind the scenes, people don't know who you are and what you do, and I think ultimately I just tried to do my best to put albums out to the world, do my best to communicate with people and let them know what I'm trying to do, and then also do my best to give back to charity, you know, like charities like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Special Olympics, those type of things too. So, you know, and I'm always fighting against trafficking, against human trafficking, trying to make sure that we fight against that and keep people aware of what's going on in their communities and their environment. So that's really been the direction I've gone. So most people know me as TC or Big Tove, and they know me for being in the music business. And it's been a lot of years. You know, I pretty much was done in about 2000, 2001. I pretty much retired from the game. And because of the No Limit Chronicles, people have kind of reached back out. And I think some of that is too, people have also just Googled me, or they've kind of, you know, talked to me and they've had conversations, and my name comes up often. When Dan Charnas did the Big Payback, I had people reach out to me because it talked about what I did during my time at No Limit and working with Master P, and how we kind of built this foundation for something pretty impressive. And I'm not gonna lie, you know, it's a sense of pride that I was part of the No Limit movement.
Yeah, I mean, it was heavy. I tell a lot of people, because people be thinking I'm lying because I'm kind of humble, but when I tell people, like, I've been rapping ever since I was probably 7, 8 years old when hip hop started, but I didn't do it professionally. I didn't even know I could do it professionally until 1994, 95.
Okay.
When I ran across Kazi D.
Absolutely.
Curtis Nelson, right? So
Kazi D. That's my guy, man.
Yeah. I was in the Navy and Kazi was in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
And I had a foot in and a foot out myself, but we crossed paths through the respective ladies we were with at the time. And he asked me to go to the studio. I rapped, and then next thing I know, he's like, "Yo, I want you to come with me to meet Master P. And I'm like, who the hell is Master P? I'm from New York. I don't know Master P. And Tobin, I got to keep it 1,000 with you. They played the music for me so I could know who he was, and I was like, man, come on, son. I'm not
feeling it, right? Not an East Coast guy. I know, man. Not an East Coast guy.
Yeah, I was mad at Kazzy for a long time because I don't know if you remember, but we met y'all at a Denny's over there by SeaTac Airport.
Oh yeah, I do remember. Yeah, I do remember.
It was you. It was P. It was King George. And I don't know, some younger cats with y'all.
But Silk Docker was there too. Yeah, we all were.
I didn't recognize him. You know what I mean? And we sat there, and P was telling stories for days about you know, where he came from and what he was building and what y'all had going on. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I was so unimpressed because at that time, I'm just giving it 1,000 with you, Tobe. I was so unimpressed because at that time I wasn't on business. I was on rap. I want to hit them bars, and he, you know, to me, it was no bars, so I didn't really even want to be there. You know what I'm saying? And,
I know. Like my mother's from New York, right? So I spent my summers in New York, so I understood the difference between what East Coast was doing at the time and being a lyricist compared to being on the West Coast, where it was more of a business grind, if you will. So I completely understand it. I completely understand the difference. That's for certain.
So when we sitting there though, and I'm looking at y'all, and I tell people this is 1995. P got all them diamonds in his mouth already. He got jewelry. I'm looking at the crew. King George is big with the big hands. You looking studious, and I'm like, yo, this is serious. Like,
we were definitely about our business. I mean, I
was impressed.
We were about our business. We were focused on growth and how do we change the game, right? Putting out as many projects as possible, being organized, moving in an organized way. So when you saw us, and then I don't know if you remember, all of us are well over 6 feet. So we were
probably, I'm over 6 feet. And I'm like, yo, who these big dudes? Because Kazzy was like, Big Chuck, you got to come with me. And I'm like, man, I don't feel like going to Seattle. And I don't know if you remember, the reason why I really didn't want to go, because when we were, I think y'all were tailgating us to this venue where it was supposed to be a show, and we got pulled over. And I got arrested. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, it happens, man. It happens.
And I was like, I knew I didn't want to come to this. But y'all gave me so much game in that meeting, man, that I went to New York the next year and started on my independent grind because I saw it was possible. And I remember P asking me, like, yo, how they like my stuff in New York? And I've kind of dismissed him, like, you know, with respect, like, yo, bro, it's you know, I see you doing what you're doing out here, but I don't know, you know.
On the East Coast, no, man.
And he told me, he said, wait till next year. I'll be everywhere. And y'all gave me some shirts that said, living for them dead presidents. And, and me and I was, we rode off, and then I got arrested. I was in Seattle for the weekend, and then I left the next year. I swear to God, I was in Brooklyn, going over the bridge on Atlantic Avenue. And I see a billboard that say Master P. I'm like, what the fuck?
We were the king of the billboards. That was our whole thing. We wanted people to see us everywhere.
Crazy.
So we had a big billboard right outside of the New Orleans airport. This is like early on. Wow. And we took our money and we got this billboard. So when you flew in, it was a big billboard that said, "Welcome to New Orleans, the home of Master P and No Limit Records." So at that time, you know, we were probably selling a couple 100,000 albums, but it was like, people were like, who the heck is No Limit Records? Who the heck? Like they were blown away, man. It was so crazy. Yeah. And it was like, people were like, man, these dudes is crazy. So we just wanted to, when you came to this particular town, and we could get a billboard, we're going to get a billboard, we're going to get a bus bench, we're going to get a bus, like anything that we could do to come to know who we were. Yeah. And it was, and people were like, man, well, you guys are crazy. You're going to spend this money on billboards? You're going to spend this? I'm like, man, as soon as people saw the billboard, then they saw the T-shirts out, and we spent money on T-shirts. So instead of like that, a lot of people will do that cheap T-shirt where they, you know, you wash it one time and you use it as a dish rag, you wash your car. we were doing 100% pre-shrunk cotton, top of the
I had
line
them
with the
T-shirts for a long time, man.
man. You probably spent 20. You could have them T-shirts for 20 years, man.
Yeah.
And we would go somewhere and then come back like 6 months later, and cats would still be wearing the shirts because they were such high quality.
Yeah.
So you see our billboard, you see our buses, you hear us, and even when before they were playing us on the radio, we would do radio commercials. So how I would set up our radio commercials to promote the album, I would do 20 commercials in a day. So the program people would be like, well, no, I don't know if you know, 20 commercials in a day, we can spread them out, we can give you this and that. I said, no, give me 20 commercials in a day. So you would hear it all on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
Starting with the morning show, going through the daytime, through the mix, you getting ready to go out, you hear that message. And it was like, and they thought it was crazy, but what would happen is you heard it if you heard a commercial 20 times in a day, you would be like, man, what are these dudes doing? I got to check it out.
Yeah.
Or you swore you heard it. So people would be like, man, I've been
distinguish between the commercial and the record.
They can't. And what people would come to me, well, you know, I do what I do. But but it was so, I'm telling you, it was crazy that people didn't understand how it worked. Because they would say to me, man, I've been hearing that commercials the last 2 months. And I'm like, oh, yeah. No, you haven't heard it. It was basically one day. But, okay, if you believe it was that. Because then they would see the billboard. Then they would see the bus bench. Then they would go in somewhere and they walked in the hood. Man,
somebody see something 7 times.
Absolutely.
It's a part of your psyche now.
And you think you see it everywhere. And you're like, man, what are these dudes doing? And then we do displays in the retail store. So we didn't have the radio locked down until later on. And really I thought it was the first song that was a national record that we got out to the country. But everything else, people had no idea. We was killing them, man. And I was like, you know, and when you work with somebody like Master P, I'm going to tell you straight up. Master P and I have had our differences. Everybody knows it. It's in the chronicles. It's in the interviews I've done. But, man, you want to talk about the hardest working guy in the world, Master P. You are not going to outwork him. You can't stop him. And that's one thing I tip my hat to him for that, because he'll put in work.
I'll say this, man, and I'll tell anybody, because I feel like, you know, because I met y'all so early on with what y'all was doing, and it wasn't that early. The Bay had already been saturated before by the time I met him. Because all the little Crips and Bloods that I knew in the town I was living in Bremerton, they were listening to this music. This was their hustle music. This was their, and I used to get in fights over this music. I swear to God. They would come to my house and put it on. I'd be like, yo, come on, son. Don't stop playing with me. I want to hear Wu-Tang, Biggie, Nas.
Oh, yeah.
I don't hear none of this. You know,
I get you.
That was my thing. But when I met y'all guys that night, I walked away from that understanding it ain't what you hustle, it's how you hustle.
Absolutely.
And that's when I got out of the streets, because I looked at it and said, it ain't what you hustle. All the time I'm investing in looking for a plug, looking for a customer, trying to trust a customer, trying to find a place to do with my money. I could be building a legitimate business with that same energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because, you know, I heard the stories and everything, man. Like, when that movie came out, he put out a movie. What was that first movie?
The I'm About It movie?
I don't know if it was the I'm About It movie. It was the bigger movie he had where he was in the shootout and the hood came up and they were shooting around the hood of the car.
Yeah, that was a little bit later on. That was after my time.
But it was one of those movies when he started doing the movies. But I remember the story he told me that night of that same situation in real life. And I was like, yo, these dudes are some thoroughbred brothers. But, you know, at the time, Kazzy is the big homie. And I'm like, all right, well, you know, you talk to Kazzy. Because I'm in the street. I don't really do this music. I just show up and rap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but
that's how it was going down, man. But you know, one thing about Kazzy, Kazzy D, and Kazzy was a great artist, great businessman. Yeah. But Kazzy D was everywhere. Anything that happened in hip hop, especially from the South, Kazzy D was there. If it was an event, if it was a party, if it was in a distribution house, anywhere, Kazzy would be there. And Kazzy remembers everything. He's got the mind of a. So sometimes Kazzy will be like, man, remember we was over at DJ Screw's house? And I was like, oh man, I forgot about that,
Yeah.
or man, I forgot we were there.
Yeah.
Because Cassie it just found a way. We would run into Cassie everywhere,
No
and I
doubt.
would run into Cassie everywhere. And it was always, Cassie's always been like family because
Yeah.
I remember talking to him, and, we went to his house, and he had all these CDs and cassettes, and they had like
Yeah.
boxes
He
and
was at
boxes.
the apartment he had.
Yeah. And I was like, what are you doing? And P said the same thing. He said, man, Cassie, what are you doing with all this stuff?
Right.
And he was like, man, this is my album. I'm like, well, you got a distributor? And he was like, well, no, I'm selling these at the truck. I said, man, it's going to take you forever to sell these. See, I said, we get a distributor.
10,000. He had 10,000 in his apartment.
Yep. And I said, you know what? I made a phone call, so I would make a phone call. Do you call this dude tomorrow? I'll make a phone call. And Cassie had a distribution after that.
City
And then
Hall,
what happened,
right?
Cassie got a big, City Hall. Cassie got a big check. He got one of them
Oh,
five-figure
don't tell me
checks.
that part. Don't tell me that part, Paul. I didn't
Man,
get
I'm
paid.
not, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But Cassie
It's
got
all
a
good.
check. And he said, after that, he called me. He said, man, I'm not hustling no more. He said,
Lied.
man,
That's my man, though.
you know he probably was hustling, but he
Yeah,
had
that's
told
my
Cassie,
man. I love
man,
Cassie, man.
he was like, TZ, I'm not hustling no more, man. This check is too. I'm telling you, man, get out. Whatever you doing, get out the game, man. Get out the game.
Cassie, I met Cassie when I was wilding, Tobe. I came out the Navy. I was wilding.
Okay.
And I want to apologize. I think the last time I saw you, I was wilding. I was
Yeah, you was, but it's all good.
Yeah,
We all grow up,
wilding,
man. We're not in the 20s anymore, so
yeah,
we
I was
grow
like
up.
22, 23. But Cassie was a real mentor of mine. Even though Cassie had two personalities. You get on this other side, he in the street. But he would always tell me, yo, Big Chuck, man, you got to chill, man. You smart, you got lyrics, do this music. But and this is why I talk about mentalities, and this is why I deal with things with mental health and all of that. It ain't so much all the time that you're what people want to call retarded. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, we don't like to use that word.
It's definitely a terrible word.
I know what you're saying.
But that's the connotation we have when we come from a certain level of understanding. You get a little older, you realize all that time you saw somebody get stabbed, that one time you saw that woman getting beat by her husband, the other time you saw your uncle high off his butt, and this stuff was putting stuff in your head and limiting your mental growth. So
absolutely,
we become grown men, but we still have these little boy minds, and we're trying to play men, but we're not men. And that's where I was when I met you guys. You know what I mean? And it was because I met you guys and my brother Cassie that I was able to never go to jail. I was able to leave that life alone before it got to me. You feel me? And you in particularly, bro, I had no idea you were a professor. When did you're like a chameleon, bro, on some real shit.
I've been told that. You know what's interesting? It's like I've never been a street guy, never claimed to be. I grew up in a working class environment. My father was in the military for, entire career. My brother was in the military Navy. My sister went to West Point, so she was in the Army. I never went that direction. And it was always about education, and it was always about learning what you could do, and always about making something of yourself and creating an environment of success for yourself. Yeah. And someone asked me a question about, when did you know what you were going to do or focus on? I always wanted to be in the music business for a long time, except for I started out, I was a rapper and a DJ.
Get out of here.
And, I was doing rapping, I was DJing. And that's the funny thing, when I met Cassie was in a group called the Mac 10 Posse, and I was rapping. So Cassie will tell you, he's like, man, remember when you was rapping? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, you was cold. Man, the group was called CBU, Coalition for Black Unity. We were on that conscious thing, right?
Okay.
So we were all, man, I was going to be the next Chuck D.
Where did you actually grow up at?
I grew up all over. I'm an Army kid, but Germany is what pretty much was my home because most of the years of my life, elementary school and high school were in Germany. So my family, military family, I lived all over the world in Europe and traveled all over the world. So I was into hip hop, but I was just about making music and good music. At first I was in that hip hop style. I was the party guy, yo, 1, 2, 3, wave your hands in the air, doing all that stuff. And then I went to that conscious bit where I was like going to be Chuck D or Paris. And I was like socially conscious. And then, when I used to work at the KAG radio in Spokane, and I also worked at a couple stations, ESPN News Radio, and
Okay.
KVX Sound in Spokane. That's when I would talk to all these people, all these record promoters, and they try to promote their record. And I found out from a financial standpoint that artists are making 8 to 12%, and the record company is making 90 to 92%.
Wow.
So at that point, I was like, man, I don't want to be the rapper. I want to be the producer, the executive producer, own the label, manage the label, run the label, because that's where it was. And most people in hip hop are like, man, you quit too soon, or you sold out, or whatever they want to say. But I was about business.
Early.
And I think for me, like, I don't know if I would have got to the level of a Public Enemy or a Paris or been one of those, just a soldier, somebody socially conscious. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I was really focused on I can make some things happen, and I could be a part of hip hop on a different level, and also be make money doing it.
Yeah.
So I found it interesting when I connected with Master P. I mean, straight street guy, hustler, like everybody knows, the ultimate hustler.
Yeah.
But it was just different. You want to talk about opposites attract. When I'm like, nah, man, we can't do that. This is why we got to do it this way. And people are always moving. And I think why our relationship worked so well, he was willing to do whatever it takes, and he believed in me, right? I'm young, but I got all these ideas, and I got these ideas like he had never really seen before, really heard before. He was just like, man, you trying to make things happen. I said, man, I'm trying to take it to the next level. And the biggest thing I always say is, how hard can it be? Like cats would always tell me, like, especially, before I hooked up with P, they would like, man, you got to start off as an intern. You got to get people coffee, get their dry cleaning. And I was like, man, why do I need to do that? I'm going to come in there and I'm going to go handle business.
Yeah.
So when I never started at that level, I started with promotions with no limit, and then got promoted to vice president and executive vice president and business manager and personal manager and all that stuff. So I started at a lower level, but I went to the top real quick.
No.
And then when you understand, you go to the top real quick. So 1993, 94, we're making regional records and people know who we are. We're in the system nationally, and everyone's like, man, what's going on? These cats are blowing up. We're hitting Billboard charts. 1995, we hitting them. We signed a deal with Priority, and more records, and nationally people are knowing us. And it just happened so fast because it was just the willing to work and grind and do whatever it takes to be successful. And it just was something that we were passionate about. And then, when P and I split, I had to start from ground zero, ground one, first step with nothing. And then being able to, I was such a pride of putting that record together, The Life of a Kingpin with King George, when nobody believed in him and nobody believed in me. Yeah. And King didn't pretty much, he'll tell you, probably didn't want to work with me. I've heard him say on a couple of interviews he didn't want to work with me. Oh, yeah, King didn't want to work with me. He still be down with No Limit and P. And honestly, I wasn't probably in love with him too much, but we was attached to him because we were both in the gutter, and we were kind of stuck in a situation. So what we did, we put that album out, and then it took a few months, but we hit Billboard, and all the records started selling. And next thing you know, we had one of the hottest records in the South, and people they couldn't believe it, because so many people didn't think. They were like, man, there's no way you're going to be able to sell these records with King George. There's no way you're going to be able to.
Because King had a distinctive voice. He was about as talented as P with the rapping,
Yeah, I mean, I think he was a hook king, right? But King could do all the hooks. His voice was strong. He had this strong voice. It was good. But lyrically, I would say he wasn't as talented as any other rapper and many of the other rappers on the label of No Limit. So it was like for us to venture out, me 24 with a baby on the way, and people know that, when P and I split, P put me in a bad position financially, and it's well documented. It's like, man, I'm $200,000 in debt with credit card debt from my time at No Limit, and he didn't pay me, and he didn't pay off the credit card like he said he would, and that's water under the bridge, I guess, kind of from that standpoint. But being able to rise from the gutter with King George, And I said this the other day. Someone asked me, like, what was that like? I said, King George and I were like Batman and Robin back to back. And we were grinding. We were in the streets. And anytime you saw us, we were together. And we would be like in all over Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and riding through parts of Florida and South Carolina and North Carolina. And just the two of us just driving in a truck or a minivan and going places and sleeping in Motel 6s on the floor. And sometimes we get a room at a Motel 6 just to put our gear there so we could go drive to a few more different spots and come back and pick it up on the way back. And just when people saw that, they were like, man,
Wow.
these guys are everywhere. I would run into Cat's place. They was like, man, what are you doing in Chicago? I was like, man, we try to grind and get these albums out, man. And to be on Billboard charts and have a sense of pride of being on Billboard charts. And even though we weren't in the top 20 or top 30, to be on there even when we were in the hundreds or we were in the 90s or the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think King used to get frustrated because, and I told this story the other night, like we would be at like 80 on the Billboard charts and P would be at like 13 or 5 or 2 or 1 or No Limit Record would be at 1.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to get to number 1, but I was also understanding that we didn't have the distribution deal. It was just me paying for albums to get pressed and going through Southwest Wholesale.
Wow.
So you don't have that distribution where someone can press up 1 million copies for you. So you got to understand, if I press up 100,000 copies, that's about $85,000-$90,000.
Wow.
Nobody's $85,000 or $90,000 just to press something up, and then we got to go on the road. Then I got to make sure we got money to stay in hotels and stuff. We never stayed anywhere fancy. I got to make sure we eat. You know, King and I was brothers. We had to make sure we had something to eat.
Yeah.
And we also had to make sure that we had enough promotional gear, because the promotional gear is what we would give and give and give to make
what
sure
they call merch now. Oh no, y'all had promotional gear. It wasn't even like y'all was making money off the shirts like the kids do now.
No, we was giving everything away. So
Right.
at that time, I remember, you know, early on, we would do shows in front of like 30 people and give away 30 T-shirts.
Wow.
And it was like we didn't make any money, but then what we do, we kept grinding, we kept working, and people started to believe in what the process was. So there was a time that when I had my own label, Me and Mine Entertainment, and I was working with King, man, we put out 50 projects, you know, over the course of that. So when people look at this discography, they're like between CDs and cassettes, over 50 albums. And then at Southwest Wholesale, we would be, you know, they would have the top 20 list, they sometimes top 50 list. Man, we'd have like 8, 7, 8, 9 albums on that, on Southwest highest sellers. Or we go into a retail place and we might be the top 20 at a Warehouse Music or something like that. And where we would go, we would be, you know, 40s or 50s on the charts. P's at number 1. He probably had 1 through 5, and it was eating King up. And we were still working and grinding and grinding.
You came and got me, Tob. I was ready at that time, man.
Oh, Big Chuck, man, I wish I would have came and got you, player, because I'm telling you, we could have did some amazing things. But we put in work.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people, you hear people online and they say, well, what did TC and King do? Well, we sold hundreds of thousands of records. That's what we did.
Yeah, you see what
we didn't sell, you know.
You living good. I see you living good.
Oh man, I'm not starving by any means, and I'm not by any means. And
Beautiful family, by the way, brother.
Thank you very much. I'm very blessed. So I think for me, I'm never ever tripping off anything because I have been blessed, and I have sold a lot of records, and I had an opportunity to do some great things and be a part of hip hop and be influential, and that's more than I could ever imagine. When you open up the Big Payback, it's a 600-page book about the history of hip hop, and everyone from P. Diddy to Russell Simmons to Leo Cohen and all these people who are legendary in the business.
Yeah.
Tobin Costen's name is in there.
You got to pay homage. You got to. I seen it firsthand. You know what I'm saying?
You know, so you know when you go to New York, I remember going to New York and I almost did a deal with Andre Harrell, and he's looking at all the different albums I had out and on the Billboard charts, and he's looking and he's like, "Man, you don't stop." I'm like, "Man, I'm not stopping. I'm just keep grinding."
Yeah.
And the funniest story. I was at MCA one time. MCA at the time, the president was Jay Boberg.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay Boberg, we met, and he wanted to do this deal, and we were talking about it. It never came to fruition, but we were going to do this deal, and we sat down, and he was talking about the Roots. No disrespect to the Roots, a great hip hop group. They are fabulous, but the Roots, it was a trip because the Roots, they called the Roots. Well, I said, well, open up the billboard that just came out. I said, open up the new billboard. Well, I opened up the billboard, and we were at like 82, and the Roots were at 90. So I probably, at that point, I was, I'm in my mid to late 20s. I'm a little cocky. And I said, well, look, I said, my album is on Billboard above the Roots, and you got a whole floor of people working on the Roots. And I said, you just got me and my man King over here working our album. I said, we do something together, we can make things happen. So Jay was really like, yeah, let's do something. So he said, well, okay, what do you want? So I said to him, I said, look, you give me $150,000 an album and let me put out 20 albums. I said, we'll be straight. He said, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot. I said, yeah, I'll do the video, I'll get the production, I'll get everything done. And to him, he was like, man, that can be done. I said, but the only thing I want $500,000 annually for medical, dental, and vision, and to take care of some folks. And I said, half of my, because he was like, you get 75 up front and then 75 when you turn the album in. I said the first 75 on all 20 records, I want it all in stock. And at the time, it was owned by Universal. I said, man, whatever stock, I want the stock. And he looked, he's like, man, we don't do that. And I was just like, why not? I said, you're going to give me 75,000, you might as well give it to me in stock. And I said, I wanted to be able to get it as if I'm an employee of the company and I get the stock option. Well, understand this. I did the same thing when I talked to Steve Rifkin when he was his label was under Sony. I did the same thing. I said, this 150, give me the half of it, the first half of $75,000 in stock. Well, if you look at it, you put out 20 projects, it's $1.5 million in Sony stock or Universal stock. So that's a game changer. And you talk about 1996, 1997. Yeah. Imagine if I had $1.5 million for 1997 and what kind of stock I would have right now, 2020. Absolutely. So it never came to fruition. But I think what happened was these people were like, okay, this dude, he tried to get medical, dental, and vision. He's trying to get stock. He's trying to stick around for a while. And I think at that time it was probably a little too much. If I would have probably just acted like, hey, just give me a couple $100,000 and I'm going to make it happen, I could have sold enough records to buy my own stock, but I was trying to get my foot in the door and really be there with Sony and really be there with DMG and Universal and all of these companies.
No doubt, but that's the only way. I mean, if you're going to play the game, you got to play it right, man.
Absolutely. I would talk to these other record labels that were doing real well and say, look, if we put our record labels together, we could create our own major label. So I would say, well, hey, how about this? On my albums, you get 20%. Mm-hmm. On your albums, I get 20%, and I keep 80%. So you get 80%. So we working like a conglomerate. So let's say we got five different labels. You paying 5 different promotion people. What if we pay one promotion person to promote all our records? You get a piece of my record, I get a piece of your record. If it's your production and everything and your artist, you get the biggest percentage. If it's mine, I get the biggest percentage, but everybody shares, everybody eats. So I said, well, what? And they said, well, what do we need to do that? Because, people get hyped. Yeah. I said, each one of us put $100,000 in a bank account and we get an accountant to kind of watch it for us. And we watch the accountant. We put $500,000 in the bank. We can start this thing up. We got the hottest albums already. Everybody knows we got the hottest stuff. I said, we can start getting other labels to work with us from the East Coast to the West Coast. We're already doing the South. We could really blow up. Man, you would have thought I asked to sleep with their wives, man. They thought I was crazy when I was talking about putting
You was talking group economics. You're talking what everybody's talking about today.
Yes. But, I think that's the thing. When you're talking about stock and overhead and medical, dental, and vision and talking to people, and when you're in a situation where you're talking about, stock and you're talking about creating a major label and guys just, they don't understand that because they're thinking that we can't do that. And I always tell people we could change the game. If you got the hottest at that time, if you got the hottest albums, it was starting to change where all the independent labels were selling more than the major labels. And the independent labels were killing it. That's why the major labels started walking by and started trying to pick up the independent labels because they knew all the independent records were hot. Everybody wanted that. They wanted that grind. And when you learn the game like I did from a great man like St. Charles, E40's uncle,
Charles, yeah.
man, St. Charles.
E40's uncle, right?
Yeah, E40's uncle, St. Charles, he taught all of us the game.
Yeah.
He taught Master P the game. He taught me the game. He taught JT the Bigger Figure the game.
JT,
he taught
big shout out to JT. Yeah.
Big shout out to JT. He taught 40 the game. He taught Be Legit the game. He taught the folks in SIBO's camp the game. Like, he taught all of these folks how to go get
records and all that stuff that was going on back then.
Man, St. Charles taught us all how to get this money. He taught us all how to develop these one sheets and get these artists together.
Is he still around?
Oh, yeah. Saint is working on a project that's going to change. I don't want to talk about it because it's his project, but he's talking about a project that's going to change the world for folks.
I believe it because and like I said, I took for granted. I want to let you get back to what you were saying. It's very important. Yep. But I took so much of that for granted being a young hothead. Cassie had me on the phone with these dudes. I used to talk to Mystical and Seabrook from what was it? Whatever that record label Mystical was on before he got with P. I used to talk to them dudes all the time and be like, all right, Cassie, I gotta go, man. But because that's what I want to ask you, because I don't like being over people's heads too much. Because right now you sound like a superhero. You sound like some mythical genius that just landed from some other planet, Wakanda, and knew all of this stuff from birth. Where did you go from growing up as an army brat, so to speak? Where did you kind of settle in and say, and like I know what you said you was doing the radio stations and stuff like that, but this forward thinking that you had, how did you develop that so early as a young black man? Because now I'm realizing we damn near the same age. You feel what I'm saying?
Man, I think a lot of it had to do with my parents. You know, my mother and father were wonderful people, hardworking people. I had an older brother and sister that were always about getting things accomplished and realized that things aren't given to you. You got to work for them. I told this to a couple of people not too long ago. When I graduated from high school, you know, people getting cars and money and all these great things and these cool gifts. My parents bought me luggage, and it was some Jordache black leather luggage. I think I still got a bag in my attic today.
Get out of here.
And I try to keep it, you know, because it just reminded me. So when they bought me that luggage for graduation, and I'm kind of salty, right? I'm like, man, my mom and dad bought me, man, my boy over here getting a car, this person getting this and that, and got some luggage, and I'll never forget. They both sat me down and they said, look, it's hard out there. You're gonna need this luggage. And when you get to where you're going, because I was leaving from Germany and going to Spokane, Washington, to Gonzaga University, they said you got all the tools. You got to make something of yourself. And I was just determined not to go back home, because you hear these horror stories, and not to knock anybody who had to go back home. They had some challenges, but I was determined not to go back home. I was determined not to be in a situation where I was a disappointment to my family. And I just wanted to learn as much as I could. And I was always trying to figure out how to do it more efficient or how to do it better. Wow. And I would say, you know, I'm just all about efficiency. You know, I'd rather work smarter than harder. And I'm willing to work hard. But if I could find a better way or easier way to do something, it just made sense. So when I was thinking about it, and then, you know, I became engaged and married and then a father very early on. I was like, man, I got a family to take care of. So when I had a baby on the way, man, I didn't have time, you know, to be playing around and messing around and smoking weed and getting drunk and doing all this stuff, because I always was about trying to get to the next level. And one thing I learned, and my dad told me this a long time ago, he says, there is no island. Just enjoy the swim. Wow. And he's just telling me there is no end to this thing until you close your eyes, right? But it's about enjoying the time you have. It's good to work hard, but just enjoy it. Because life is, he said, another thing, you know, my mom told me one time, she said, life is not a movie, it's a soap opera. You're going to go through the ups and the downs and be in love and be frustrated and all those things. And it keeps going until you close your eyes. And you've got to be able to kind of stick and move in a direction and just get things rolling and focus on what you can and how you can be successful. And I've just been blessed, man.
Big shot to the
I absolutely. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother, to my family now. Yeah. I mean, they're so wonderful. I love all of them. And it's just like they just keep me grounded and keep me focused. And I think that's what it was always for me. Even, you know, at that time when P and I split, I mean, I was hurt. I was devastated. I'm in debt. And I'm like, you know, when I was trying to go different routes to go with attorneys, and no attorney would take my case. And I finally met with a cat that I talked to that really gave me the game. He was an attorney in San Francisco. And he said to me, look, nobody's going to take your case. The money that you're going to have to do to try to get this, because right now, at that time, P's hot. Priority's behind him. He's got a ton of money. Priority got a ton of money. And he's telling me, yeah, sure. And what the crazy thing is, the attorney told me, he said, look, even if you got that money, it's gonna take you so long to get it. Yeah. Most of the money you get, you're going to be given to me.
Wow.
And it's time for you, and even though how bitter a pill it is to swallow, you're doing things, you're on the Billboard charts, be satisfied with that. Always work harder, but just be focused on you.
Yeah.
And once you move on and focus on you, you'll be feeling a lot better. And I'm not going to lie, I felt so much better.
Yeah.
And even though I had to make these big payments to pay off this debt that was owed, I felt better because I wasn't focused on my anger with anybody, with Master P or anybody. And I learned to say, it's about what I'm going to do and what I'm going to try to do. Mm-hmm. And I tried to get to the ultimate level. I tried to get, my focus was trying to change the world. And whether I gave back to charity or whether I made a ton of money, that was my focus. But I was very happy with what I was doing and where I was at and where I'm at today. I own a lovely home in California. I got a lovely family. I'm hardworking. I'm dedicated. I teach some of the greatest students you can teach at Holy Name.
Teach, bro.
I teach business management and marketing and sports management and sports marketing and marketing research. So when you teach some great students who come from, those folks are first in family to go to college, a lot of our students, and they are focused on, their careers and their lives. Mm-hmm. It just, how can I be mad about anything? I always say my life is dope because I do dope things, and and that's my motto. I don't need to tell people what I do because I do. The only reason things have come up is because the No Limit Chronicles, and those folks came to me. I didn't seek out them; they came to me, and they were like, "You are part of the journey. You're part of the foundation. Everyone mentions your name. So you need to tell your part of the story."
Because have you even spoke to P since then?
No.
You guys haven't had a conversation since the 90s.
We haven't had a conversation since we got into a fight, 1996.
Y'all had an actual fist fight.
It was like the No Limit crew jumped me, and it was fine because I didn't get much damage, and it was fine. Be honest with
you, people. You looking at his face, but Tobin ain't no little dude, man. He's a man. That's crazy. Hey. When did that? Because I met y'all in '96. I met y'all in '95, but by '96.
Yeah. So a year later. Yeah. At the end of the day, it had to do with, I was trying to get the money that was owed to me and get this debt paid. It wasn't paid. We happened to run into each other, and I said, "Hey, what?" Because when we split, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna pay that card. Don't worry about that, those credit card situation, and I'm gonna pay you, and then you go your way, I go my way." So when we split, I was like, I didn't even think, honestly, I thought it was cool. All I knew is I was not gonna have any debt, and I was gonna have a couple $100,000 in my pocket, and I would start my own label. Yeah. And it didn't work that way. So when I ran into P, he was, 8 deep, and I was, 1 deep. I was actually 2 deep because I had the producer of Life of a Kingpin with me. But when everything went down, he was hiding behind the counter with the with the rest in peace to AK. I'm sorry, but he was he was hiding behind the counter while I was,
Is he from the Bay?
AK was from the Bay,
I
from
know
Oakland.
About. Yeah.
He's no longer with us, but he was hanging back because
God bless his soul.
Absolutely, he was the one telling the story to everyone. What happened? Yeah. And he was like, "Man, this dude." I went from TC to Big Tobe at that point because he was like, "Man, Tobe was, throwing them things," and it really wasn't. Like I said, I didn't really do anything. I think the only thing that I could thank Master P for, if there's anything thankful for at that moment, was Cass pulled out guns and he told them, "Cass, don't pop me," and then they kind of took off because they felt the police were coming. So
wow,
that was the one thing. So I will tell you, that was the thing. After that, I had I was angry for a while because you put your life and your effort into folks, and I was invested in No Limit Records significantly. And then when sometimes things don't work out, people go their different ways. But when you owe me and you want to be upset with me when you owe me, it just didn't make sense at the time. It still doesn't. Yeah. And the reason so at the end of the day, when I look at it, I'm like, we get into it. That's the last time we saw each other, and we never saw each other since. And at this point, I'm like, it doesn't really matter because it's been so many years.
Yeah,
it is what it is. Now it's kind of crazy because we ran in the same. I wouldn't say we ran in the same circles, but we were both in the industry for a while. And it's and sometimes you would think that, and sometimes we would miss each other because cats would be like, "Oh man, P was just here," or they would tell me, "Man, you just missed P after you left," or whatever. And we never saw each other. We never spoke.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even know that happened, man.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
When No Limit blew up, and I was back in New York by that time, because what I meant to tell you is when I met y'all in '95, y'all gave me the T-shirts. I pull off, I go to jail. I'm mad at y'all because nobody bailed me out. Cassie didn't bail me out. I'm like, all these dudes.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know. I would at least put some money in your books if you was in there.
I was so mad at Cassie. Like, bro, y'all left me in here, and I got out like the next day or something like that. But I went to New York in '95, and I was wearing the shirts. I went in the barber shop, and I'm asking dudes like, "Yo, y'all heard of this dude, Master P?" They clowning. Master P, what is he, a slave master? Like, yo, they clowning, hard body. Playing music, they clowning even harder. They kicked me out the barber shop. Like, yo, don't ever come in here again. So when I got divorced in '96 and I moved back to New York, I go to this same barber shop, and what do I hear?
Master P.
About it. I'm like, yo, don't y'all know that's the same guy? That's when I knew people get brainwashed. That's when
they do.
You can get brainwashed because this is the same music. I think About It was that out in '95? Was that?
It was on the TRU album in '95, and it
like
started
the same record.
We were getting
big shout to Dee. My ex-wife just chimed in. You probably remember her.
Yes, absolutely. How you doing?
Yeah, for sure. So, man, this is crazy. I had no idea that happened. The next time I talked to you, you was doing Reverend Do Wrong.
Yes.
And I wanted to submit a song to you, and it just never happened for some reason. And I never even got to see the whole movie. Where can we find that at?
Well, you can find the Reverend Do Wrong Ain't Right. It is on Amazon Prime. So if you look for the Reverend Do Wrong Ain't Right on Amazon Prime. But what I did do, I put it on YouTube for free. So if you look up the Costen and Hammer network, it's a network that I have, a platform that I have with one of my former students, Josh Hammer. Wow. It is on page, and you can watch it. It's an hour and 15 hours, 15 minutes. So, and it's cool because we got the producer of Friday, W.E. Baker, produced the movie with me, and we got Yo-Yo in the movie. Yeah. We got the Muslim brothers from the Nutty Professor and the Old School in the movie. We got Violet Brown, the great Violet Brown, who was at Warehouse Music, great buyer, who's also a lot of times known as the godmother of gangster rap because she supported so many of us who had our independent labels and went on to major labels. So yeah, I hope you get a chance to see it.
I'm going to see it right after this, man. I promise you, man.
Okay, cool, man. I appreciate it.
Because that's all I ever heard. Because I was going to send you the song for the soundtrack, and like I said, it didn't happen. Things were totally different. It wasn't no social media.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a person's phone number or pager, your pager changes, all these different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I sometimes forget how I'm like, man, I don't even know how I kept in contact with Cassie because I would see Cassie everywhere. Man, I'd be in New York and there's Cassie D walking down the street. I'm like, man. And we would just always kept in contact. But then, you know, when you get to Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff, you start running into people, especially after the No Limit Chronicles. I had so many cats. I had a cat who hit me up from third grade. He was like, man, don't you remember we was in third grade together with Mrs. Gassett in Nuremberg, Germany? I was like, oh, my God. Wow. So, yeah, I had so many people hit me up. My phone was blowing up, text messages, and my LinkedIn everywhere. It was just going crazy. So
what's crazy, though, is like, even before that came, I said, I got to talk to Tobin. You know what I'm saying? Because I've stayed in touch. I don't even know I've stayed in touch with you over the years. Like,
yeah, off and on, absolutely.
I hit you up, I see you online or something, and we'll chop it up. But I wanted to talk to you because so many people used to think I was lying about that affiliation. Because they like, you from New York. What was you doing on the West Coast with Master P and all these gangsters? It was a lot of gangsters, man.
It was definitely an interesting time.
How was you holding it down like that, bro? Because you, by all intents and purposes, people could see you ain't a gangster. But you was a lot of gangsters.
I was a square dude. And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you, man. I'm like
heart of bigger than most of the gangsters.
I think I was more. I was just about being successful, so I didn't really care about all that stuff, and I wasn't afraid. I was like, I think sometimes when people talk about, you know, No Limit Records, man, I was right there. You know, as you know, I was right there in the hood with them. I was out there, you know, when we were performing, and sometimes we were in some of the hardest neighborhoods in the country. I was there, and I think I was more focused on the prize and being successful than I was like the environment I was in.
It was dangerous.
And it was, you know, it was some dangerous opportunities.
He was like one of the first ones that got lost. And the RBL posse too.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. So when you go to these places. And I remember doing shows where we did a show one time. These gangsters shot up the whole parking lot. And we're just all down on the ground and they just shooting.
Wow.
And they shot so much you could smell the gunpowder in the air, right?
Wow.
And what happened was the police were around and they just waited until everybody was done shooting and took everybody to jail. And luckily I was like, well, I'm the manager, and we were just here to perform. I don't know what's going on. These gangsters are everywhere.
If you weren't it probably wouldn't have worked out for y'all.
Oh, no. I was completely square, and luckily it was a situation where nobody, you know, none of the crew went to jail, but I'd never seen something.
Where was this at, in California?
This was in Richmond, California.
Serious.
It was crazy. They shot up the whole. I'd never seen anything like that. So when you start seeing people shooting up clubs and shooting and running people over, and you start,
were y'all in Portland when the guy got ran over? We did a.
Oh yeah, when the dude got run over. Oh man, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Rest in peace to Cool Nuts. I ain't talking, but rest in peace to that brother, man.
Yeah, but I mean, when cats get run over, cats get shot, cats get shot at, and you're in those situations, it's like, man, it is crazy.
Yeah, man.
It's absolutely crazy.
I've never seen nothing like it in my life. And that's what ended up happening with me in 96 when, like I said, me and my lady split. I came back to New York. I'm still on this hip-hop thing, but now I'm more conscious than I ever been. I'm like what they want to call Didi said people never believe that story. But now I'm more conscious than I ever been now. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I can't get it by selling drugs because that goes against what I believe in now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because people don't understand. A lot of dudes were selling drugs and financing these careers. Let's just put it out there. There was a lot of hustling going on. You know what I'm saying? In the midst of good business decisions, it was a lot of hustle. It was more hustlers that was funneling money into the game than it was smart people that had vision Because the people that you know had the vision, they still around. You know what I'm saying? A lot of
Yes.
dudes ain't here, man. They did long stretches.
Unfortunately, man,
yeah.
I never had that. I mean, that was the thing. I think I never had distribution money where somebody gave you $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I never had. I'm obviously not a drug dealer. Never was. I'd be one of them guys. I'd be the first one to go to jail. So
Yeah.
I know people that they're good at being criminals and that's what they do. But I would not be good at it. I would snitch on myself. So that's not something that was in my DNA. My family was always anti-drugs. I never did drugs. I never smoked weed. I never did any of that.
Wow, get out of here, man.
Nah, man, I never did.
A lot of weed around you, though, Tobe.
Oh yeah. I remember cats used to say. I remember when I was in college, I knew some cats that would smoke weed, and they want me to smoke weed. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do. I don't smoke weed, and they would be like, you gonna snitch on us? I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna snitch on you, but I'm definitely not gonna smoke. And my kids are, now it's legal to smoke in California. Yeah. And I remember my kids, they're not into that stuff, and I'm not into that stuff. And they were like, Dad, do you think you'll smoke weed now that it's legal? I'm like, no. I mean, if you see me smoking weed, I got a disease or something, and I got big problems.
I just can't believe it, because the Bay Area, where you were saturated in and all of that was just high weed.
There are a lot of people I knew that was smoking weed and doing that. I never smoked marijuana. I never did any drugs. Only pills I ever took were any sort of pills that were prescribed to me by the doctor for my health. And I've never done anything like that. So, and I'm not knocking anybody who smokes at all, if that's what they do, but I just never did.
It's a beautiful feeling to know that you can not have to look over your shoulder and all of that good stuff, because you've walked the righteous path. Because like I said, since, let's say late 90s or whatever, I just never had the penchant to get down and dirty in the street like that. Yeah. Because first of all, I realized the position I'm playing in my own people's genocide. Mm-hmm. Then I realized, like, I'm being a pawn in a game that I know I'm not going to win. And then who am I going to war with? Who am I selling to? What is going on here? It's just us against us. I knew that in 96, but the music industry didn't want to hear that. I used to go to meetings and they wanted something more gangster. They wanted this, they wanted that. And I'm like, wow. Like, don't y'all got enough of that? Like, you feel me? But I wish me and you would have had a better connection back then, man, because I could have used a lot of that guidance you had, man. We definitely would have changed some things.
I would love to put your album out. You're always so talented, and I mean, I think we could have closed some records. I think now it's, when people are talking street stuff, and every once in a while I get somebody want to get in my inbox and talk street stuff, and I'm like, man, we either pushing 50 or in our 50s, and some folks are in their 60s. Yeah. And like, why are we talking about street stuff? At the end of the day, man, it's just live your life and enjoy your life. And if you didn't make your money 20 years ago like you wanted to, go make it now. Figure out your way to go make it now. Especially now with the internet, there is so much opportunity with the internet to make money. There is so much opportunity with the internet to make money. You don't have to wait around for this thing, man. And that's what I always tell people 100% of the time. You don't have to wait around, because you could sell product online. You could do music if that's what you want to do. Yeah. Find something that you can do to make money and generate revenue for yourself. And maybe you have to do a job. Maybe you have to do a job and do that on the side. I often tell people the biggest thing that you can do is figure out the best way for you to generate money, and it's solving the problem. When you find that there's a problem that people have and you can find a way to solve it, you will always have opportunity. As a business person or as an employee, you can always find opportunity. So you have to be thinking about, what do people need at this moment, and how can I help them? And how can I help them? And if I do it the right way, you'll be able to generate revenue for yourself. And at first, absolutely, because at first you might have to work. You might have to go work that 40-hour week or 50-hour week job. Yeah. But make sure that you take your time and work on your craft and work on what your entrepreneurship. Students always tell me, oh, Professor Costen, we don't have time. We don't have time. And I do a time study of everything they do. Well, how much do you work out? Okay, great. That's important. Okay, how much time do you take to eat? How much time do you take to be on the internet? How much time do you take to play video games? All of those things that, hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But don't be upset if you don't get to the goals that you want to get to. Because there's
Absolutely.
24 hours in a day. And I've been fortunate, I'm blessed. I don't need to sleep that much. So my mind's always thinking about how I can be better and do better.
Yo, we running out of time now, though, but I
Okay.
appreciate you, big homie.
I appreciate
I'm
you.
gonna stay in touch with you, man. And I thank you
Absolutely.
for checking in, man. I stay in touch with you,
Thank you.
Tobe.
All
One
right,
love.
be
Love
safe,
you, good
man. I
brother.
appreciate you. All right, be safe.